everybody, and welcome back. After 2 long months to the Duke Wisdom podcast, it really has been too long, like way too long. But in the off season, there's not a ton of storylines, that kind of thing. But I think that mostly this 2 months has been a way for me to find out what my life looks like right now. I think the last time I had an episode, it was probably just, as I was figuring out that I got a job in the industry right after I graduated. So I graduated in May and then go about 2 months down the line, and I started my job as the sports editor at the Roxborough Courier Times. So that's the job that I have now. I'm in charge of pretty much everything that has to do with sports in that county. So there's 2 different high schools in the county, 3 different middle schools. I cover all the sports for all the schools, and I produce a 5-page sports section every week. I'm writing stories, taking pictures, getting a lot better at photography. There's no doubt about that. We produce a weekly podcast, one of my coworkers and I, about the kind of weekly recap of the paper and what's going on in the county. I deal with social media, something that I certainly have experience with. But something I didn't have experience with was running Facebook. I never had a Facebook in my entire life, and maybe that's just my age group coming through, I guess. But now I have. Now I've done it, and so that I'm running that for the sports page for the paper, and I've been busy, man. I've been really busy. I helped produce a 56-page fall sports preview for the paper, which was a lot of work, but a very rewarding process. I helped, and I guess it's been a work in progress, learning how to do all this and learning how to manage my time, learning what my schedule looks like. So my schedule's kind of weird because I think there's a lot of people in this community, in this Duke basketball media landscape, that have a job that isn't a working journalist, but a job as a working journalist, and especially when you're not, your job that you're making most of your money from is not the one that has to do with Duke basketball. It's a weird schedule. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every weekday, I'm working some sort of game at some point, usually in the afternoon or at night. I get home anywhere ranging from 5, 6 o'clock to 11 to midnight. It varies on a day-to-day basis. The good thing about high school sports is I don't have to cover on weekends most of the time, so that's nice. But the schedule varies a lot. I've found that I have time a lot more maybe in the mornings on like Thursdays and Fridays, and that's kind of nice to get a little bit of regularity in that. But it's been difficult for these first 2 months, and I had a trip to Atlanta, which was a lot of fun, that I took about a month ago now at the beginning of August, where I actually missed a week of work, but it's a trip I've had planned for such a long time. And my girlfriend and I went to Atlanta to watch the Braves and the Brewers, and we spent about a week there. Brewers swept that series. I'm a Brewers fan. If you guys didn't know, Milwaukee professional sports fan. So I've talked about my love for the Bucks many times, but the Brewers got the sweep there, which was much to her dismay. She wasn't very happy, my girlfriend, about that. However, I was pretty pleased. That's a pretty good time for me. I made an ill-advised purchase of. I bought first base from the first game of the series. I thought, man, I mean, what a cool token to have from that trip. And I was just like, how do I remember this? And I saw that they were selling the base plates from the games, and I'm like, man, how can I justify spending the money for this? And I sat down for the second game, the third game. I spent about 48 hours thinking about it. So I finally just said, look, man, I'm going to bite the bullet. I don't normally do something like this, but this is really cool. And I love Willy Adames. He's one of my favorite players for the Brewers, and he hit 2 home runs on that base plate in that game, and they won 10-0. So I think that's a pretty cool thing to have. But anyway, I digress. I majorly digress. We took that trip. A lot's happened in the last 2 months for me personally, and this job has been rewarding and taxing. It's my first full-time experience within the industry. Obviously, I've got experience within the industry, But what I've been trying to figure out for the last 2 months is, where does Duke Wisdom fit into my schedule? What can I do for Duke Wisdom? Because I want to grow it so badly. Like, I want to get the growth that Duke Wisdom has seen within the last few couple of years, but especially within the last year since I've started this podcast and started the Duke Wisdom Network and had so many wonderful people come and work with me on the website and everything we do here. And I'm so grateful for those people. And I want to continue to grow this platform and produce content at least at the same level that I have been doing so for the last year. But I know that that's not going to be easy. I don't want to overwork myself. I don't want to drain myself of energy, especially when I have a commitment to so many different things. But this is something that's incredibly important to me. And I just want to ensure everybody that, yes, I took a 2-month break, but it was during the off season. Duke Wisdom's not going anywhere. The Duke Wisdom podcast is not going anywhere. I'm so proud. I'm so proud to have kept this thing going now for, I think we've pretty much hit the 11-year mark since I started this thing, which means I've been doing this for half my life. You might be thinking, oh, 11 years, half your life, man, you're young. Yeah, I am. But I think that's pretty cool. Half my life I've been going at this, and I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. Not at all. So I'm very happy to be back on the mic and doing this again. And I'm very happy to be balancing it with what I'm doing. I have plans. I want to try to go for credentials again for women's basketball this year. Throw my hat in the ring for men's basketball. Don't know how fruitful that will be, but we'll see. Credentials are hard for me this year because, and I'd love some help covering games if I can pull that off with some people in the network. But I know that for certain I will be able to do some weekend games, but weekdays are hard. And that kind of brings me to my next subject. Well, two subjects, actually. One is not only am I balancing my job with Duke Wisdom, I'm also balancing it with my internship at the North Carolina Sports Network, which has not ended. I have no interest in ending my time there, because my true love and passion and what I want to do industry is be in college basketball. And both Duke Wisdom and my time with the North Carolina Sports Network with David Glenn, that helps me be in the world of college basketball. And I want to stay ingrained in the world of college basketball and continue to talk to people, create dialogue about it, commentary about it, articles about it, and just be engrossed by that community and that world, because that's what I love. I love sports, but college basketball is really what I love the most. And that's why I'm here. That's why I take the time to do something like this. And I'm so glad that people take the time to listen to what I have to say about this, which I think is crazy that you do. So the other thing, I guess, is that for the first time since 2000, so I've gone every year since 2011, the Countdown to Craziness, every year. Since 2011 was the first year I ever went. I was, I guess, 9 years old the first time I went to Countdown to Craziness, and I've gone to every single one since until this year, which is so unfortunate, actually. So incredibly unfortunate, and it's going to be a little bit of a trend this year. But I cannot be there in person because it's a Friday night. Right now, I'm wishing that they still had Countdown on Saturday night like they used 2 years ago. But it's a Friday night thing, has been for a little while now. And Friday night is Friday Night Lights, man. And unfortunately, bye week for the high school is September 27th, just 1 week before I really wanted it to be October 4th for Countdown. It didn't work out that way. But I think that's all right. I think that's all right. And I'm still so excited for Countdown and to watch it back and provide commentary and talk about it and have those discussions with everybody, because I love it so much. Countdown is one of my favorite things in the entire world, and it's less than a month away. I mean, how exciting is that? There's going to be another episode that I do where I talk about the non-conference schedule breakdown. That'll be coming soon. I have not decided yet whether I'm going to go back to the 2 episodes a week or 1 for right now. We're going to see. But excited for the non-conference schedule breakdown. Today's episode is mostly going to be focused on what has or how has my mind changed about what Duke's rotation is going to look like.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network or DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
So we did a ranking, Duke Wisdom Network, the collaborative ranking that we did of this year's current roster. We ranked them 1 through 15, average ranking through like 8-9 different ballots. And so what my ballot looked like then, months ago now, it looks nothing like that. It looks somewhat like that, but there's certainly a lot of changes. So I kind of want to break down the fact that this Duke team to me seems a little bit underrated, which is crazy to say when you're a top 10 team. But like most polls, a lot of polls have Carolina ranked over Duke, which not even just being like a homer in any sort of way, I think is a puzzling decision. I think really the only reason for that is the return of R.J. Davis to Carolina, but that's not really enough in my eyes to look past the defensive concerns and the interior concerns that Carolina will have this season. The loss of Armando Bacot and Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan are big losses. And they've done a little bit to make up for some of those losses, and I think they'll be able to somewhat make up for Ingram and make up for Ryan, but making up for Bacot, maybe not so much. With Washington and Van Allen Lubin playing in the middle, I just don't know. I have some concerns about Carolina this year. But anyway, Duke, a little bit underrated because when you look at this roster, it has everything you could ask for, just everything you could want. It has experience. It has transfers. It has a couple of returners who are backcourt players, and backcourt returning players I think are especially important in college basketball because they're the floor generals. Think of like a Quinn Cook type guy. Think of a John Shire, a Nolan Smith type guy. I think that's what Duke has. And some people might say, whoa, slow your roll. Let's not compare Tyrese Proctor, to John Shire and to Quinn Cook. I don't know if he'll score the points. He probably won't. I don't think he will. But I think that he can play that leader role. I've compared him time and time again to Wendell Moore Jr., and I'm going to keep doing that because I think it's a good comparison. And I think Wendell Moore did a good job of being a leader on a Final Four team. I think Tyrese Proctor can do something similar. But Duke has those returning players, those transfers, a lot of experience with the young freshmen. And not only do they have young freshmen, experienced returners, and experienced transfers, in all 3 categories, they have trustworthy players that are really good, that you can put in a game, and that they're going to do their job, and you don't have to cringe and think, maybe he's going to slip up. You don't think that way. And also, in all 3 of those groups, you have high-level defenders. And defense wins championships, like truly in college basketball. So for me right now, Duke has more or less 12 non-walk-ons. Spencer Hubbard's not technically a walk-on, but he'll play walk-on minutes. Cam Sheffield's also going to play walk-on minutes, more or less. So that kind of brings you to 11 guys. As far as I'm concerned, Darren Harris probably won't play a huge role this season. I think that's probably a given. I think Patrick Gongbo will get spot minutes. I don't see him getting major minutes unless, and knock on wood, but unless you see some sort of injury to one of the starting front court members, I cannot see a world in which Pat plays consistent minutes every game. I think Patrick, I like to think of like a freshman year Marquise Bolton when I think of what Patrick Gongbo will play role-wise this season. Like, he's a good player, he's a solid player, but he's just not going to see the floor a whole lot because there are really, 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 really talented guys in front of him in this rotation, like Kaman Malawach, like Malik Brown, like Cooper Flagg, and you kind of think, well, how much time really is there for him when you have those things to consider? And so that's where I land on Gongba. So then you get to 9 different guys. For me, of the remaining 9, 8 of them will make up the primary rotation in March. And that means there's an odd man out. And these 9 players, really, you wouldn't think that there would be an odd man out because they're so good. The guy I have on the cutting room floor, the 9th man, in my mind right now, and mind you, we have not seen them play. A scrimmage, an exhibition, nothing. Not really. Not in front of our own eyes in a full game format have we really seen these guys get at it. But just from what I've heard about players, what I've seen from them, and then my kind of gut reaction, I think Isaiah Evans is the guy that kind of gets left as the ninth guy this year. That doesn't mean he's not going to play. I think obviously Duke played about 9 deep last year. Even playing 9 guys in tournament scenarios, well, 8 guys because no Caleb Foster. And that's why I think that for me, Isaiah Evans will play the amount of minutes that either Jalen Blakes or Sean Stewart, one or the other, probably more like Sean, was playing by the end of the season, which isn't horrible. But for me, this is where I land on Isaiah. He's a wing. And Duke has a lot of players who can score on the wing. Cooper Flagg will play a lot of time on the wing. He'll also play stretch 4, but some time on the wing, and he can score, obviously. Con Kneppel, who is just the rave of the team offensively, will be able to score at that same position. And I think in a very efficient manner. Sion James is a veteran at that position with good build, good defensive instincts. Mason Gillis is a veteran at that position with good feel, good defensive instincts. And so for me, it's like when you've got all those options, and then you've got also other backcourt players who are going to play a lot of minutes. Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster are going to play a lot. And when I think about the other 8 guys and how much they have to play, I'm like, is there anything keeping them off the floor? Not much. And I'll go through each one of them. For me with Isaiah I know will be able to score. I will see about the efficiency of his ability to score on the college level. That's still kind of like, who knows? We haven't seen it yet. But I think defense is the key fact here. Isaiah is a really, really skinny guy. And that is the way that basketball is trending. Basketball is trending in a really skinny direction. That's kind of just what's happening right now. I look at AJ Johnson, who just got drafted by the Bucks as a skinny kid in the first round, who's a similar height and build to Isaiah, honestly. But for me in college basketball is so defense driven. You have to be able to defend to stay on the floor. And if you can't defend well enough, you got to be able to fill up the box score. We're talking 17 points per game at least to be able to make up for that. And so to me, it's like I just look at his frame, and people love calling him Baby Ingram. And I love that comparison. I think he plays a lot like Brandon Ingram. He looks a little bit like Brandon Ingram. And so, but the difference is B.I. was 6'9", 6'10" in college. Isaiah's 6'6" or 6'7". And those are a big couple of inches, big few inches there. That's a big difference. It honestly is. Defensively speaking, it's like there are concerns that he'll get pushed around a little bit. Defense has been floated as a concern for him. I've seen him high in mock drafts. I think a lot of people have had Isaiah high in mock drafts. I think there's good reason for that. But I don't think that potential is going to get realized after his freshman season. I'm saying this on September 9th, by the way. I'm saying this on September 9th. And I hope that, honestly, I think that maybe people will listen to this and maybe if he hears it or something, it lights a fire under him. Dude, I hope so. Because I'm doing nothing but rooting for this guy. I love his moxie. I love his game. Just such a fantastic guy for every reason. And I think I could be dead wrong. I might be dead wrong. He might be starter material. But for me, when I just look at how deep this team can be by March, like I think Isaiah's going to play a fairly consistent, like whatever his minutes ends up being, it'll be like here, he'll play at the beginning of the season. I just think obviously that rotation kind of gets weeded out as the season progresses. And for me, the other 8 guys aren't getting weeded out. I just don't see a way that any of the 8 get weeded out unless by injury. So let's start with that. Let's start with who I would kind of pinpoint as a safe 7th or 8th man in this rotation. He's a guy that I don't think there's really any risk whatsoever of him being in the starting lineup, and that is Mason Gillis. I don't think Mason's going to, there's no way Mason starts, right? There's just no way that Mason is in the starting lineup. And the reason for that is because he's not going to start over Sion. He's not going to start over Coop, obviously, but any of these guys, he's not going to get the bid over. He was literally the Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year. He operates well off the bench, and he will do his job. He will come in, he will hit threes at a good clip, and he will defend. And he is what you want, 24-year-old veteran coming off and just doing his job to a T off the bench. There's no way he's not going to be in rotation. No way. He will be in the 8-man rotation all season long. No way he's not. There's also just pretty much no way he starts in my mind. And so that's where I land on Mason Gillis. He's in rotation. He's just not in the starting lineup. Right now, the starters are a big, fat question mark to me. There's 3 that I know are starting. And then there's 4 that I'm like, there's 2 spots for the 4 of you. So half of you get it. 3 that I know are starting are Tyrese Proctor. I think that's pretty clear. Starting point guard, without a doubt, will be Tyrese Proctor. I think I have been very clear that I think that he is ready to make that jump now as a junior, that I think everybody hyped him up to make that jump as a sophomore, but I think they got a little bit ahead of themselves, just like they did with Wendell Moore as a sophomore. Got a little bit ahead of ourselves. And I thought that even then, I was thinking that there were people saying Tyrese Proctor was going to be the best player on the team last year. And I thought we might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much here. I thought it was a little bit of a jump to say he was better than Kyle or Jeremy, and that ended up being correct. And so, but this year, I don't think it's a jump to say that he's going to be this team's second best player. I don't think that's a jump. Now, will he be the second best player? I don't know. Who knows? But if I had to guess right now, he would be my pick for second best guy on roster. And so that's what I think of Tyrese. I think he's second best player on the team at the moment. Or he'll play his role will put him at that. Because there's arguments that's was Wendell Moore actually the second best player on the 2022 team, or was it Mark, or was it AJ, or whatever. But when push came to shove, the second most important player from the first game to the last game of the season, you look at the total picture, it was Wendell. And I think that's what Tyrese can be this year. And I think there's just no way he's not in the starting lineup. He's obviously there. Another guy that's obviously there is Cooper Flagg. He's but more than likely the best player on the team, it seems. That's pretty much almost a foregone conclusion. If Tyrese is Wendell, then Cooper's Paulo. So Cooper's in the lineup. For me, this team has a lot of size. The average height on this team, I did the math, is a little bit over 6'7". That's massive. This is a massive basketball team, and it would be an absolute shame to play small ball lineups. I know there's some dudes that love a small ball lineup, John Shire last year included. Please, I'm begging you, back off the small ball lineup. There just aren't many college basketball teams that win national titles without true centers. It just doesn't really happen. There's a couple of instances maybe, but it doesn't happen very often. True centers are necessary. And if you're going to start a true center on this Duke team, there's literally only one option for that, and it is Kaman Malawach. Yet there are going to be people that say he's not going to be that good to start the season, work in progress, he's going to be raw. Yeah, I say yes to all of those things. You're right, probably. That's probably true. But let him work through it, trial by fire. Don't get comfortable with the idea of Malik Brown at the 5. That is an option you can use, but it cannot be the regular thing. Kaman Malawach needs to be starting center day one, period. period. Even if he doesn't start on the first game, he should be in the game by the 15-minute mark. Like within 5 minutes of that game starting, he should be in. There's really no excuse, I think, here, unless he's just bad. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's the case at all. So he's too talented for that. And so for me, it's just like, don't lean into the small ball. Don't marry the small ball when you have one of the most talented young centers that has ever graced the program on your roster. Put him in the lineup and let him work through it. Let him work through it. It's a lot better to let him work through it in November and December and then have him more polished by March. That's great. That's fine. Like, do you want to play it safe and not give him the minutes he needs, and then he's not ready to be what he should be by March? Or would you rather lose a game or two that maybe you wouldn't have lost, or not even lose, but play games closer that could have been more lopsided your way because he was working it out on the court? But then you end up getting a ring in March or in April for it. I think that makes sense. Play him. He's got to start. Those are my three. Tyrese Proctor, Cooper Flagg, Kaman Malewich. They're in the starting lineup. Zero questions for me. Here's the other four. I think that more than likely, and especially on day one, he will be starting. But more than likely, he will start pretty much the whole season, is Caleb Foster. I didn't include him in the three foregone conclusions because I think there is a way that Caleb Foster doesn't start, and that way is if Sion James and Con Kneppel or Malik Brown, if 2 out of 3 of those dudes are just hooping, and you just cannot keep them out of that starting 5. Like, they're just that good. Then there's a way that but Foster is one of the 2 returning main players. He started like half the games last season. Obviously, John has trust in him. Obviously, he's really good. He and Con won a 3v3 tournament with the jack of all trades, Mr. Renaissance Man, Stanley Borden. Like, obviously, Caleb's playing well. He's doing really well. He's hosting a podcast. A lot of people say hosts a podcast are really good dudes. That's what I've heard. But so Caleb, anyway, so he's a solid player. He's a returner. He's point guard capable, and will share that duty with Tyrese Proctor, presumably. So for me, it's like, yeah, Caleb's definitely starting day one and probably will maintain that spot. There's a chance he doesn't, but probably maintains that spot. Now, if he does maintain that spot, you got Proctor, Foster, Flagg playing either the 3 or the 4, and then Kaman Malewich. I think if since you're starting Kaman, and Pat's probably not playing like crazy minutes, I don't know, because if you want Malik Brown as a starter in that 5 would be ridiculous. Just ridiculous defensively. But there's the part of me that's like, well, maybe you need Malik to back up in this case. And so maybe Malik should come off the bench, even though I think he's probably the best defender on the team. And a lot of the guys have said that to back that claim up, that he's just an absolute nuisance in passing lanes and is going to be an ACC Defensive Player of the Year front runner, I think, this year. But Malik maybe off the bench. And in that case, okay, now Sion James is starting. And now you have him at the 3, Coop at the 4. And I like that lineup. But then you could also go the really big, really scary defensive lineup, which is Tyrese Proctor, Sion James, Cooper Flagg, Malik Brown, Kaman Malewich. That's the lineup that I would break out personally if I was Jon Scheyer. I'm not Jon Scheyer, obviously. He doesn't have to have a podcast. He did have a podcast. Actually, at one point, they had him hosting like the official team one. So never mind. John and I think alike, probably, maybe. Who knows? But I swear, I just ramble on this sometimes. But those 5 guys, if you're thinking Tyrese, Sion, Cooper, Malik, and Kaman, defensively, that's what I throw out against Carolina. Like, without a doubt, that's what I throw out against Carolina. Because if you think about Carolina, their biggest weakness is like, what do they do defensively? What do you do if you're Carolina? Because if you're Carolina, what is your best 5? Like RJ Davis, Elliot Cadeau, like maybe Ian Jackson, Cade Tyson, and then either like Van Allen Lubin or Jalen Washington. Probably your best 5 that you can throw out there. If that's the 5 you're throwing out against that Duke starting lineup I just talked about, Tyrese Proctor has proved that he can defend RJ Davis at a high level. Carolina fans will tell you, oh, he still had 17 because Proctor got into like foul trouble toward the end of the game, and almost all those points were scored against not Tyrese Proctor. Tyrese Proctor had RJ Davis in Alcatraz straight up. And so I know that he can defend RJ Davis. And then just the thought of like, and then RJ, I think Tyrese with a more confident game this year will be able to get buckets off on Davis and post him up. We're talking 6'5" to 5'11". That's a big difference. And then another big difference is 6'7", built like a linebacker for Alabama, Sion James going against Elliot Cadeau. It's not a favorable matchup on either side for Carolina. Ian Jackson against Cooper Flagg is not a favorable matchup on either side for Carolina. Malik Brown versus Cade Tyson is not favorable because Cade Tyson is not a great interior defender, but even so, Malik's not going to shoot that much. So it doesn't matter a whole lot. And then Malik's going to have the opportunity to take away one of Carolina's best offensive threats, in my opinion, probably their second best offensive threat in Cade Tyson. And then at the 5, Van Allen Lubin or Jalen Washington, it doesn't really matter. Neither of them's really going to light Kaman Malawach up. And can they defend him? I don't know. So that lineup goes crazy for Duke and that matchup. And I think that's what I would go with. Obviously, Caleb's going to play in the game, though, because Caleb's killer as well. But for me, that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. And then Khan, everybody's raved about Khan. They just raved about Khan, saying that dude doesn't miss. And I am so excited to see his shot-making capabilities. I'm getting flashes and thoughts of Luke Kennard and Matt Hurt, just a player that I know is just a shooter and can put up points in a hurry. But I'm thinking maybe similar to Kennard and Hurt. Maybe Kneppel doesn't have his 20-point-per-game season this year. Now, obviously, he'll be in rotation because if you can score at that kind of level, you're going to play. But maybe his best basketball is yet to be seen after this season. And he'll come out his sophomore year and have that kind of breakout, make me a first-round pick type season that Luke Kennard had. Because, honestly, there's defensive questions, I think, surrounding him, just like there are Isaiah Evans. I think that there's just a more concrete path for Kneppel to get in the game as a shooter, and a really solid shooter that is consistently getting praise. I think that there's just, at this point, seeing what everyone has said about him, I don't think there's any way you can keep that guy out of the rotation. There's just no way. The question is whether he'll start or not. And I don't know, because that's a hard task. To get in over Caleb, Sion, or Malik is a hard task because those guys all bring something at a really, really, really high level. And I think it's going to be hard to pass any of them up as starters. I don't envy Jon Scheyer making this decision, but the good news is that he has so many options, so many reliable options. I mean, how many teams can you say that you have 8 guys? And I can say this, there are 8 guys on this team that I have pretty much full confidence in at the moment. Now, again, this is September 9th. I'm talking way, way out of turn and way before anything has really got into motion. But it's an exciting time in college basketball. It's exciting for me. Lindy's College Basketball Preview magazine is hitting the stands. They put our guy Caleb Foster on the front of it, and he's bigger than RJ Davis on it, might I add, which is funny. But big time, always pick that up every year. It's going to be a sad day if that ever stops. I love physical print sports media. I mean, that's literally what I do now as a job, making sports sections. And I absolutely love holding that newspaper in my hand. And I love holding the Lindy's College Basketball Preview magazine. I miss the days where I would get Lindy's, Athlon, Sporting News, and then the ACC Sports Journal, which, literally my boss, David, made. And I miss the days where I had all of those and I would go and get all of them every year. And now there's really just the one option. I mean, there's also the Blue Ribbon Yearbook, but that's not like hitting newsstands. So it's a little bit different. But that's still very cool, nonetheless. Anyway, so that's my rotation talk. And that's kind of also my getting caught up on where my life is and where this podcast is and going. Nothing is substantially changing. Let me put it that way. I'm doing everything I can. Duke Wisdom is alive and well, and it's going to keep being alive and well. as long as I am. And there's no doubt about that because I absolutely love doing this. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in after the 2-month hiatus. And please continue to tune in as the Duke Wisdom podcast revamps and as Duke Wisdom revamps, hoping to get some articles going. Duke Wisdom Network back and running as Countdown to Craziness approaches. When Countdown comes up, that's when we're really going to hit full gear on bringing content back up and having graphics and stuff on the Instagram, that kind of thing. But thanks so much for listening as always, and I will talk to you guys later.